First of all, welcome to our Sophomore Parent Evening, and thanks for joining us. Our goal tonight is to recap our school and college counseling activities to date and fill you in on the road ahead. So let me start with some introductions. First, our school counselors, Lynn Chesbro, if you can maybe give a wave, Amy Stern, and Dean Davis. Okay, and Laura Silence also works with on the school side. And on the college side, Rick Hutchinson, Pete Francini, Laura Silence, and myself. All right, so, whoops. You know, those doors are actually supposed to be open. I called security, and at some point maybe they will be. So, welcome. This evening, representing our school counselors, Lynn Chesbro is going to walk you through a review of our sophomore counseling activities. Laura and Rick will then provide a look ahead at our junior year program of college counseling activities. As always, we welcome your questions. Sort of make mental notes as we move along here. Know that we're recording the event. Thank you to Ron DeRosa, who's here with us tonight to record. He'll prepare the recording and we'll send it out to all sophomore homes. And we'll also send out the PowerPoint that we use tonight that you'll be viewing as we work our way through the evening. I'd like to just offer a few words to set the context for our evening, and then we'll begin with our presentation. So, first of all, yes, we value the opportunity to speak with you because, in fact, we're collaborators in guiding your sons as they progress through their prep careers and in their lives. And that's really particularly true at this challenging time. It's both challenging and pivotal. Challenging for what your sons have been required to balance up to now in terms of activities, studies, and things like that, and challenging because of what they will be required to balance in the next 2 years as we add in college counseling and taking a look at colleges and doing those kinds of tasks as well. Pivotal, in fact, pivotal because the challenges that they'll have over the next couple of years, particularly in the upper years, the goal is to help them develop a greater awareness of their strengths and discover in their lives a sense of direction, both of which are important factors as they expand their energies and focus, because we're adding in, as I said earlier, the college piece. Times of challenge and change can cause your sons, and all of us, I suppose, to focus on the unfamiliar. What's new? What have I not done before? In fact, our goal is to, yes, deal with that, but also encourage them to deal with the knowns. What is it that they already know based on their first several years? Number one, what they've achieved thus far in their personal growth and their academic growth. And each year we call on them to basically take a bit of an inventory and set goals. Also, we want them to focus on the known of their growing sense of their interests and their talents and their emerging goals. Goal setting is certainly a big part of our activities as well. And of course, what else is a known? The strength and caring support of the prep community. We have a large and busy department and lots of supports there. Their teachers are great supports, their coaches, campus ministry. Again, there's a lot of that in our prep community as well. Many of the questions that you and your sons may have will be addressed tonight and throughout the course of the years ahead. And as they move ahead and you move ahead in the process, know that we have established as a department great connections with certainly our teachers, our other supports here on campus, and the colleges to which they'll be looking over the next couple of years. We monitor the airways of change. In fact, one of our counselors, Pete Francini, just got back from visiting college in the Midwest. We have a very strong and comprehensive college advising network among the Jesuit schools that we stay in touch with as well. And so the goal is to keep us and you informed of what's happening in the college landscape. We are ready to walk with your sons and to challenge them as they define themselves, decide future steps, and then learn to represent themselves. You know, something that'll come up later on in the presentation is there's a college fair coming up, learning to represent themselves. Junior year will familiarize them with the essential college preparation steps as they identify appropriate college options. We position our sophomore parents' night every year in the late spring. It's at this point that your sons can sort of look ahead with a little bit of knowledge. So for example, at this point, they have nearly 2 years of academic record, a PSAT, digital PSAT, a pre-ACT score, which is all certainly on file in the counseling office, and you're aware of those things as well. And of course, the foundation of 2 years in their prep journey. By their experiences in and out of the classroom, these 2 years, your sons have, in these years, they've become more and more aware of their interests, abilities, and academic achievement will guide them. And those are the things that we need to fuel the conversation ahead. Our counseling program, which is both school and college over the next 2 years, is structured to guide your sons in making good decisions. preparing them to balance their energies and their efforts, assisting them to prioritize and manage their academics and their activities as well. So we talk often about, the prep experience. Yes, it's in the classroom, but there's a lot of other facets of the prep experience. In short, it's been our goal that your sons are prepared to confidently engage their upper years so as to manage significant decisions, those that await them as they continue to define themselves personally and intellectually. So tonight we'll bring you up to the present in terms of this year's school and counseling activities and preview strategies, goals, and activities of the next 2 years as your sons continue to develop and engage the college process. Our goal is that you be aware of our activities as we guide your sons and of our role in them and how we can coordinate and collaborate with you. As we link the first 2 years with the next 2, you'll recognize a distinct change in PrEP's counseling program on both the school and college counseling side, one which now moves much more intentionally to encouraging your sons to more fully recognize and refine their talents and their interests, and then translate those things into choices which will guide them through the specific tasks of the college process. These next life steps will present challenges and choices. We like to look at them as opportunities for growth, and they truly are. So what's ahead? Many things. Kairos, leadership, a deeper relationship with service, leadership in and out of the classroom, a deeper commitment in areas of interest in and out of the classroom. The list is endless, and the context for this list is in the graduated graduation as your sons strive to live out the 5 pillars. We call on them as a school and as a department to be open to growth, religious, loving, intellectually competent, and committed to justice. Colleges know that. That's the context out of which they apply to colleges. They're very well aware of who we are as a school and what we call on our students to do and to be. And you'll hear a little bit more of that later on. The number and importance of tasks that juniors and seniors manage increases significantly, as does the gravity of the work that they're doing. The counseling support they receive through the next stages will guide them. We as school and college counselors are well aware of the challenges and certainly well equipped to manage them. For your sons, it's all about taking important steps in their personal and academic lives, and for us, it's all about encouraging them to approach those challenges and opportunities ahead with great confidence. As we move forward, I want to invite up Mrs. Lynn Chesbro to begin talking a little bit about the school counseling side, and then she'll be followed by Rick Hutchinson and Laura Silence. Thank you.
Okay. As you likely know, your sons have had a counseling seminar built into his schedule. So both last year and freshman year and this year, sophomore year, your sons have been in the classroom with members of the counseling department. It meets once every cycle, so once every 8 school days. And in the freshman and sophomore counseling seminar, we cover a variety of academic and social emotional topics. Last year, Amy Stern and I split the freshman class, so your sons had either Amy or I for their assigned counselor, and we both co-taught the freshman counseling seminar. This year and sophomore year, as we've expanded our department and restructured, Dean Davis, Amy Stern, Laura Silence, and I have been working in the classroom with the boys for the sophomore counseling seminar. We really make an effort to rotate which class we go into so that over the course of a few cycles, we see all of the boys and they see each one of the counselors. Even if it's not their assigned counselor, we feel it's important that they really know and are familiar with and comfortable with all the members of the department. If they come into the office with a question or a need to see someone, even if their assigned counselor is not there, they know all of us from the time we have in class with them, which we feel is really important. Some of the topics that are a little bit of a carryover or a continued conversation from freshman year that we've been doing with your sons this year in sophomore counseling seminar, creating balance and goal setting, certainly exam preparation ahead of midterm exams, final exams, which we also try and make sure the boys understand can be generalized to just regular exam prep for a classroom test or quiz. Course registration, substance use is a conversation we had with them last year in the freshman counseling seminar and have continued this year and expanded it. The grad at grad reflection, John had mentioned the 5 pillars of the grad at grad. We've brought that into the counseling seminar to offer the boys some time to reflect on where they stand with each of those pillars and where there are some opportunities for growth. Some of the topics that are a little more specific to sophomore year that we've introduced to your sons this year, pretty early on this year, we started talking to them about the PSAT because they did all take it in October. So in the class, we talked about the exam, what they could expect. We offered some time for some practice and preparation, and also directed them towards some resources that they could use to prepare on their own. We did the same for the pre-ACT that they took in March as well. So for both of those standardized tests, made sure they understood what they could expect when they were in the testing situation and how they could prepare themselves for it. We've also done a transcript review where we brought in a packet of actual prep student alumni transcripts, all identifying information deleted, but each transcript showed a little bit of a different grade trend, and we talked about the importance of the trend you're showing over the 3 and 4 years on your transcript and how those different trends would be viewed in the college admissions process and which trends are a little more favorable. That was so that they really had a clear understanding of what information is on their academic record, their transcript that colleges will eventually see and be making a decision about them on. In that conversation, we did also talk about all the other aspects to what will eventually be their college application, so they had a really good understanding of the different ways they will show themselves as a student and the different people here at Prep who will support their application documentation. To speak to them as students, but also where they're able to show themselves more as a person, that activities resume and that involvement outside of the classroom, the essay that they will write for themselves, the counselor recommendation that will support their application. We will be talking about activities resumes toward we only have a few cycles left with them, so one of our last few cycles is talking about their extracurricular involvement. So far, we'll give them an opportunity to get into Naviance, which we have talked with them about, or we've gotten the boys logged into their accounts already, but there's an activities resume feature where they are able to log the activities that they've been involved with, and doing that just shows them what they already have devoted their time to and where there are some opportunities for growth. That Naviance program that we introduced the boys to, we got them all logged into their account. There's a wealth of information about colleges and careers that they have access to through Naviance. So that was introduced to the boys early in the year, and we'll be back in the program when we do the activities resume workshop with the boys. We're going to round out the year with a preview of junior year, sort of a presentation very similar to what you'll be seeing this evening, so they have a really good understanding of what's to come. These conversations we've been having them all along the way are meant to help them see that bigger picture, kind of plant the seed of what is to come, the planning that will be going into what will be happening after their time at Prep, but also making sure they're using their time here well, and making sure that they have put themselves in a position where they're going to have all the options that they would want to have. So your sons will be finishing out sophomore counseling seminar with a very similar presentation of what you are seeing this evening. So Amy, Laura, Dean, and I will continue working with your boys next year when they're juniors as their school counselors, and then of course they will continue working with their college counselors. And though we have focused on the freshman and sophomore counseling seminar, the college counselors are the ones who take over for that junior counseling seminar. They have been in for a number of these discussions with your boys. So your boys not only have seen their college counselor for one-on-one meetings, many of them, but they've also seen them in the counseling seminar. All right, I'll turn it over to Rick Hutchinson.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, Rick Hutchinson, one of the college counselors. So we have the questions on the board. Sort of. Oh, I like this. I can see it right there. So the questions on the board. So what should I be doing? I think the first questions. The first one is, am I behind? The answer is no. No one's behind at this point. It doesn't matter where you are. You're not behind. Everyone can be in a different place. I know some families are familiar with applying to college. You might have older children, so you've got a good sort of plan moving forward. And perhaps you don't, and that's fine as well. So we've touched on major topics, as Lynn has mentioned. with your son, so it's not like it's totally foreign to them. And each student's going to be in a different place, and we meet them where they are. We meet you as a family where you are as well. And that's fine. That doesn't mean there can't be steps to be taken moving forward, and we're going to touch on some of those tonight. But moving in small steps, I think, helps. When you try to do things really large and too many college visits too early can overwhelm. Sometimes your son might be ready for that. And I've had, certainly there are sophomores that seem ready for that, and others, this is, they're just trying to get their footing a little bit, and that's fine. Again, we will meet them where they are. So we'll touch on a lot of topics on what we think you can be doing and what they should be doing moving forward. So, in the college search, we've touched on these topics in the classroom, in the college counseling, and when we've had individual meetings with the students. Although most of the time we meet with the students in their sophomore year, it's a little bit more getting to know them on a personal level, and then touch on these topics if they feel they're ready for it. All the students have a Naviance account, college planning thing. Naviance is a great tool for managing the college planning process. If you haven't been able to log into that, the simplest thing to do is just email us, the counselor. We can click on the button. We can get you logged into that. For some reason, you haven't been able to log into that. It's a great tool. They haven't done too much with it. They've been introduced with it, so don't expect that they've done a whole lot with it yet, but you have access to their accounts as well, and that can be a nice tool for you. And then we've gone over sort of preliminary how to go through college searching, and also one of the big things that really hits them first in the process is standardized testing. That's what I'm going to be sort of focusing in on right now. When they do college, the whole college process, the first thing that hits them is standardized testing. That's the first thing that becomes very real, and it becomes very official, because most students are taking their official SATs and ACTs beginning in junior year. It can start in sophomore year, and perhaps in some families have already done that, but most of the time you're doing that in junior year. But preparing for that and getting them exposed to those tests really happens in sophomore year. So it's kind of crazy. Here they are in October of their sophomore year, still sort of thinking like they're transitioning to high school, and we're already talking about doing a PSAT to practice an SAT, which is a college entrance exam. So, we sort of hit them with these preliminary tests. So I'll get to over what we've done with them already, but let me just lay the landscape a little bit at what's going on with standardized testing. It doesn't seem like really a week or two can go by where you don't hear something in the news. The big one in the last 2 weeks was Harvard and the University of Texas now requiring SATs or ACTs, once again requiring them. But despite hearing about that, the reality is right now, at least projecting move forward and information receiving from colleges, the majority of colleges are going to remain test optional through your sons applying to college. Of course, that can change, and they can change, and we'll sort of keep apprised of that. But test optional basically means that your sons have the choice in which they want their testing to be used as part of their application evaluation. It really puts more of the control in the students' hands in deciding how they're going to be evaluated at colleges. Pre-2020, really the vast majority of colleges in the United States require testing, with the East Coast private schools in a very heavy concentration being test optional. 2020 hit, COVID hit, and taking a test was nearly impossible, so pretty much every college went test optional, and were for essentially the last 3 years. And what we're seeing in terms of what's happening with it, most are remaining test optional, but a couple things are happening. One is highly selective colleges and some state universities, primarily in the South state universities, are moving towards requiring testing. I can rip them off for you right now. It's 4 Ivy League schools. You've got Harvard, Yale, Brown, and Dartmouth. You've got MIT and Georgetown, all requiring testing. And in terms of the large state schools, you've got it's Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and then you actually have Purdue University up in Indiana. So in the big scheme of 3,000 colleges, that's not a large number. So it's, if you go through this process and testing is not playing out well for your son, rest assured there's going to be many options for them to apply to colleges. And we are having many students gain admission to college without testing. So when they say they're test optional, they are. There are some caveats to that, and that we certainly can say a strong test score has its advantages. We're not going to lie to you. And so don't think that testing doesn't matter, because it does. It can have a positive, much like a special talent, strong essays, strong recommendations. It can be a tip factor in the process. So a strong test score is advantageous. So that's why we encourage all the students, go through the process. Even if your son is feeling, or you feel testing's not his strength, go through the process. Go through the practice test. Give it a good effort. Go and register and take those SATs and ACTs in junior year and see where the dust settles. And then in senior year, we can make that decision. Their college counselor and you, and we can sit down and decide, is the testing appropriate moving forward? Because I think there's been a handful of students that sort of abandoned the test a little too fast and may have reached a certain level that might have been advantageous to them. So we want them to go through the process, make the decision in senior year whether you're going to include that. Don't make the decision in sophomore year. And what we're seeing is, though, the other thing, and this is sort of subtle, is that some test selective colleges that are test optional really are kind of leaning towards test preferred. And while that's sort of unofficial, we see that through the data. A good example, Emory University, highly selective college down in Atlanta, Georgia, was looking at about 70 to 75% between the two campuses of the students they admitted did submit a test score, which is kind of an indication that testing is kind of important to them, though they're willing to admit without it, but testing can be important. So what do we do? What is sort of the role of the students? We are sort of in the preparation end of that, and that's where we have them do the PSAT, that practice SAT, which they took in the fall. Was the first year of the digital version of that, which was pretty well received in terms of students feeling comfortable taking it. There wasn't a whole lot of logistical issues with that, at least the vast majority there weren't. This spring we did a pre-ACT, which is the practice ACT. That is still a pencil and paper exam. Will it move to a digital? There is talk that it could be digital, and it's certainly possible. I think it's probably unlikely that it would be fully digital by next year, but it is possible. But right now it is a paper and pencil exam. We will revisit the PSAT once again in junior year. The pre-ACT is a test that's it's really not us, it's the ACT organization, only geared towards just sophomores taking it. That's why we do it just once. But they will have, by October of next year, 2 PSATs under their belt and a pre-ACT, which we completely sign them up for. We administer, we get the scores back to you, and all those scores are available to you on your son's Naviance accounts. Those scores are in there so you can sort of see where those scores rest. Once the practice rounds are done, we are out of the test administration business. We fall into more of an advising role. We serve in advising in terms of helping students make decisions on what testing they're going to do. So once we get sort of past October of next year, that's where it really falls in the hands of families and the students to start making some decisions, because students must have their own accounts and must register themselves for testing. It's not something the school does. That doesn't happen anywhere. All students across all high schools in the country must register themselves for a standardized test. All of your sons have a College Board account. That's with the SAT. That was handled. They had to have one to take the PSAT. An ACT account you will need to create on your own. They did not need to create an ACT account in order to take the pre-ACT. So that's a step we did not take right now. So you can decide to do that if they decide to do the ACT. Fairfield Prep's not a test site, so when you do register for these eventually, the testing will either be usually at a high school located near where you live, and you'll decide where and when you're going to take those. And then ultimately, in senior year, if you're going to submit your scores to the colleges, that's a step that you'll take. And how you go about doing that, we'll cover that 2 years from now. But right now, eventually know that it will be something you do. It's not submitted by the high school. So these are the test dates sort of moving into next year. We always recommend that students, whatever they choose to take, and again, that decision can be based upon their comfort level with the PSAT or pre-ACT, and the college counselor can sort of help them, guide them, and make those decisions. Most of the time, students walk in and pretty much sort of know what they want to do, but occasionally if they need some help, guidance, we can be there for that. We certainly recommend that students take these exams 2 to 3 times. That's usually our recommendation. So it is about planning. It really is. It's about looking at your calendar and planning and knowing, what would work best for you in terms of the activities they have, in terms of conflicts you might have in your family's lives, things like that. Very often, although it doesn't look like that this year, that April ACT is often conflicted with April break. Doesn't appear that it's going to be that next year. But sometimes spring sports overlap a little bit, so you just need to look at those dates and map it out as best you can. A general plan is take the test, an official test, twice in junior year, let the dust settle, and then decide if you want to take it again in senior year. That's a plan that that's sort of a strategy that a lot of students can take. So. That is everything for standardized testing, and I'm going to pass it on to Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Silence. I am on the school and college counseling side of things, so I do both. And I just want to say to begin with that I know there's a lot of information coming at you, And this is the very beginning of a long journey. So, and I'm going to say this next year when you're juniors, but everybody should take a deep breath, and that we've got you. There was a sign earlier that said, we're here for you, as well as the boys. So as we do all this information, remember, we're going to be sending you lists. As Lynn said, we're going to be doing all of this presentation with the boys, and we're going to do it more than once. We're going to do it over and over again, because we know sometimes they don't hear things the first time that you say them, and we're going to remind them and support them through this process. Junior year, as we go in, it's really very, very focused on the college process, and I think it's that repetition. Everything that we're going to talk about, we're actually going to do with the boys in class, in our seminars. And I think, I've worked at other schools, this is a really comprehensive program that has a lot of scaffolding moving forward. So one of the things to start thinking about is, how do we start to search for a college, right? How does that even begin? Some boys may be like, I know where I'm going, and this is what I want, right away. And that may change. And some kids may be like, I don't even know what college is. They may not have any idea what they want to do, and that's okay. I think, we had said earlier, we meet them where they're at. But it's important to start to have these conversations. It's important to start to get them know that there are colleges out there, that there's a college for every boy that goes to Fairfield Prep. Do they want to go to a big school, a small school, a liberal arts school? Do they want to specialize in engineering or in business or in research? And we define all of that for them. We do a whole class about what is a university versus a college. And we are here to answer those questions for you as well. But it's important just to kind of start to float those questions to the boys. Oh, we were at the sophomore parent meeting, we started to talk about colleges. Have you had any thoughts? Have you had any conversations? Sample a college. We're have this great advantage of being on a college campus, and a lot of boys take that for granted. They're like, oh, I don't need to tour Fairfield University. I'm here every day. It is a totally different experience to be feet on the ground, meeting with a student, walking through Fairfield University, or Sacred Heart, or Quinnipiac. Sometimes I recommend, even if they're not interested in those schools, just practice. It's like rehearsing, going on tour. Just go on a tour, figure out what questions to ask, see how people behave. Start to create lists. Maybe a lot of times they'll come in and they'll name, like, I'm not a big sports person, but like the Big Ten. They'll be like, oh, I want to go to the Big, and they'll name all these schools, but they don't really know what that means. But that's okay. We start to put those lists together, and then we start to mold them a little bit. You do that at home, they do that on their own, and things start to be, it's like a giant funnel, and we start to weed it down a little bit. It's an ongoing conversation for you to have, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to maybe manage that conversation to keep stress at a lower level at home. But we have them here, starting junior year, starting next week, really. We're in there talking a lot about this exact presentation. And the other piece of it is starting to engage. If you go to Fairfield U, follow up, have the boys write a thank you letter for the tour, write to the admissions office, just say, hey, I was at Fairfield U, I'm a prep student, it was so great to see Fairfield from a different point of view. Does not have to be a lot, but have them start to engage in the process, because then they can take a little bit of ownership over it. Okay, so this is a list where, again, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. These are things that your son can start to do now. John had mentioned it a little bit earlier, is an activities list. What are they doing? And what can they build on? They're going to be upperclassmen next year. Can they take on leadership roles? We just had a couple weeks ago where students are starting new clubs. Do they have an idea? Do they have a passion of something that they want to do, that they want to bring? Have they been on a retreat? Have they been on Kairos? These are all things that are open to them next year. Have they done their service? Have they found something that they've really engaged in with service? Maybe it's on their sport. Are they going to take that to a different level? Maybe they're going to study somewhere this summer or do their musical instrument. How can they take what they do and continue to build on it? And maybe they're not doing anything, right? I'm sure those guys are out there too. How do we get them to do these retreats? Those are conversations that we have every time they come into our office. What are you doing? What are you doing outside of your studies? Have you been on a retreat? What are you doing for service? Do you like that? Is that something that you might want to continue? So that's how we start to build the activities resume. When we go into, I think Lynn and they're going to be doing the activities resume in a couple of weeks, and by doing that, they can start to see, oh, maybe I need to do some more service. Them seeing it on pen and paper is going to help them clarify what they still may need to do. Rick went over investigating standardized and test prep. You've got some time for that, right? That's going to be really going into next year. But you might want to see, maybe you're finding that your son's doing really, really well on the PSAT, and that's something that maybe they want to study a little bit over the summer to be able to get ready for October, and then moving on to the standardized testing. So Naviance. How many people in here know what Naviance is? Oh, good. Okay. So I like to think of it as, because I'm old, I like to think of it as I used to say briefcase, and the boys were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's like a backpack where we keep all of our information, and hopefully it's cleaner than the boys' backpacks, that we keep everything in order. So it's the way that we're going to communicate with you and the boys. So one thing that you can do, every parent will have their own code, so you don't go in as your son, you go in as yourself. We can see, and I'm a school counselor, so my son's has a lot of the mom in there. Parents have put in some schools, and we go in and just put in schools that we're thinking about. It's not a decision. So I will tell a boy, go put it in. If you're interested in it, put it in. And then you can go in through Naviance and explore that school. How big is it? How many boys versus girls go to that school? Do they have fraternities? How much does it cost? All of those things are through Naviance. So it's really great information, and it's also a portal into the websites of the schools. Like I said, visit schools. They can go visit a school. If you're on vacation, let's say you're going up to Vermont this summer, and you just happen to be driving by Burlington, you'll be like, you know what, let's go take a look at UVM. Let's just drive by. Start to get them to see schools. You don't have to force it if they're not super ready, but it's not a bad idea to go see some schools. We're really fortunate from where we live is that we've got so many schools within an hour drive or a train ride from where we stand right now. So just start to feel them out. Again, some boys are going to be like, let's go, and some boys are going to be like, I can't talk about this right now, okay? But that's okay. We're going to start to unfold that a little bit for them. If you do go to a school, really starting the summer, going into next week, make sure that you do an official tour. That goes back to that engagement piece. That you do a drive-by, and then your son's like, I want to go back and really do an official tour there. But start to sign up for official tours. Get to talk to some students, contact admissions offices. We're going to talk more about this engagement piece, that some schools really track that. And they're going to be like, this young man has been coming here since sophomore year. Some of the big universities, they don't track that. They don't need to. But some of the smaller schools, we have 100% seen this year a real difference about students who've engaged in the process at a school, gone to do official tours. And this is also just an important thing, and I kind of said it earlier. Those correspondence should all come from your sons. It should not be your email saying, my son and I were just there. This colleges really want the boys to take ownership of this, and to hear from them. One great way to start the process is next Tuesday night. If your boys were not at the one in the fall, there's the Southern Connecticut College Fair. It's at the amphitheater in Bridgeport, which is not far from here at all. I think there were 200 schools on the list, Jen, the last time. There's about 200 schools there. There's different businesses are there. There's gap year programs. There's military. Hopefully it'll be a nice day. It's a really fun event, and it just gives the boys an opportunity to go start to talk to reps. Maybe they can find some of those big schools that they've been really interested in and talk to that rep, get a flyer. We encourage them to wear their prep gear. We have heard numerous times for the, I think, 10 years that it's been going on almost, you can see the prep boys because they're wearing their red. You can see them in their uniforms, but they identify them, and we have had reps say to us, we always know who the prep boys are. They're polite, and they're wearing their prep gear. And that's part of that engagement. They know us. They start to know the boys. So that's really important. So we are going to encourage them during our counseling sessions next week to register. The boys will get a QR code, and then they can just check in at the tables for each of the schools. They're going to get a million emails that they'll have to start to sort out. But it's a really good way to start to get their minds even just thinking about it, right? Have them go over the list, what schools do I want to go to, or just start to practice doing this kind of a search. There'll be another one in the fall that they can go to, but we're trying to get them, if they're ready, and I'm going to be honest with you, I had a sophomore last year, he was not ready to go in the spring. He was like, I'm not ready. But he was there in the fall, ready to go. So take their lead, right? We don't want to force this on them because we don't want to stress anybody out. Next year, so for those of you who haven't been through the college process since maybe they applied to college, it's different now. So there's something called the Common Application where you don't have to, like I did, have to put it in a typewriter and type in every different application. You do all of the general information on one page, on one form, and then you submit certain questions to specific schools. We're going to create a Common App account with them next year. We're going to talk about the essay. We're going to talk about the activities. If you would like to, you can just go kind of look at what the Common App looks like so that you're familiar with it. But please do not create an account for your boys yet. We'll do that next year, but it might be helpful just to take a look at it from your perspective. If your son is interested in playing sports in college, that might be something. The NCAA Eligibility Center might be something that they want to sign up for. That usually will happen next year, but just want to give you a heads up that is also something that we'll touch base on with them next year. But if that's something that you think is in the path for your son, might be something to just research a little bit about how to do that, because we don't do that for them, but just know that it's on the horizon. Okay, so what can you do as a parent? For my kids, I'm going to tell you it's awful because I'm a college counselor, so it was awful for them, and they didn't listen to a word I said. So don't do what I did, which was talk about it all the time. You want to start to encourage them to engage in the process. Like I said, go home tonight and be like, oh, we started talking about college. Have you thought about it at all? Right? And don't, I would not force it. And you might find, yeah, I'm going to the college fair, that's great. You might find, no, I'm not, I got to pass math tomorrow. Like they may not want to talk about it. Know that as they go into junior year, they're under a lot of pressure. They're doing a lot. We're telling them, be a leader in a club, get good grades, do your sport, right? Make sure that you have a job, do your community service. It can be a little bit overwhelming, right? So one of the words, a couple of the words that I like to think about is finding fit in a school and just finding balance in their experience, balance in their junior year, and having a real understanding that it might be something that we're thinking about all the time, but they've got all of these other things to be thinking about as well. One piece of advice might be that starting junior year is that you only talk about it, like on Sundays, right? You have like your 1 hour that you're going to talk about college, and I know that sounds very Pollyanna-ish, but we had a rule in my house when my nieces and nephews were going through the process is we don't talk about it at family events, right? It's not because they can't have 15 people saying, where are you going to college, where are you going to college, where are you going to college? So we were all told, don't nobody ask. So you might want to just carve out a special time and be like, look, I'm not going to ask you every day if you've done your essay, if you've done your application, if you've done this. Let's sit down on a Sunday afternoon and say, where are we on our list of things to do? And that way they know what to expect and you know what to expect as well. Remember that it's a process. Rick had said, we're at the beginning of this journey, and it's like a checklist, and that's how we're describing it to the boys. We're going to take you step by step through the process, and kids are going to go at different speeds. Your sons are going to go at different speeds, and it's not a race against somebody else. It's meeting them where they're at. Some of them might need a little bit of pushing, and some of them might be a little, need to pull them back a little bit, but every student's journey is going to be unique. We are 100% here for you. A lot of information, a lot of things to do, but we make lists for you. We are always available on phone. We can answer email questions. We are here for you. So it's exciting. I love this process. I'm a total nerd about it. So I think we all are, I love going to college campuses. I just said that I was with my son who's a junior. I went to 6 campuses last week, and I couldn't tell you whether or not he hated a school or loved a school. I mean, miles and miles of walking like this. And then he'd get in the car and he'd be like, I loved it. I'm like, what? That's crazy. Like, so just know that they're paying attention, whether or not, and sometimes they seem like they're not, but they are. I'm going to hand it over to John. This is the breakdown of our counselors, so if you're not sure who your son's counselor, school counselor, college counselor are, and I'm going to hand it over to John for questions, so thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So I hope what you're hearing, or we hope what you're hearing tonight, is that we're, as a department, in terms of our approach, that we're comprehensive. We hope that you hear that we are collaborative, and really, we hope that you hear that we're holistic. So really, we know that this is about becoming. You know, again, I can spend a lot of time up here talking to you about the fact that, yeah, they just unlocked the door. Okay, so you can all come in here now. It's a magnetic lock. So, you know, there won't be a year that goes by where a student doesn't look at only big schools and maybe puts on his list one smaller school, and in the end, you know what? He's going to go to that smaller school. Laura talked about fit. Fit is important. And how do you discover fit? You don't necessarily discover it at a college fair, but you can dip your toe in the water. And I think that's what we're really saying to students right now. So we're not pushing the college fair. Some of us will be around there at the college fair next week. It's 3 hours. You can go for 15 minutes or all 3 hours. It's totally up to you. But I think one of the things that the college fair and our activities help them to do is to learn to represent themselves. So in other words, you're standing in line, now you walk up and, you know, they do their scan code, and by the way, you've already gotten the emails on that, correct? On the college fair, sure. And with the instructions on how to do the scan code, a number of students have already done that, and they track that, by the way. We keep in touch with the person who's the main organizer of the fair, and by the way, it's college fairs. We already have a date for the fall fair, so it's every spring and every fall. So once again, you don't miss it if this isn't the right time. But again, I think dipping your toe in the water and getting a sense of it is really important. So once again, you know, the idea is that we're holistic, and much of what you heard tonight is about helping them to become who they're supposed to become, and in fact, to determine who they're supposed to become. And that's not our role only. That's their teachers and their coaches and their instructors in their different activities. It's those people who say, hey, you know what, you've done a really good job in robotics, maybe you should take the lead next year. All those things are starting to appear because, in fact, you know, they're jumping into the junior level next year and the seniors are graduating. Slots are opening. And so they've probably done a whole lot of observing at this point. Some of them have gotten involved in leadership, but maybe they've done some observing and now it's time for them to jump in and take leadership positions, or maybe a secondary position and then become more of a leader in their senior year. Journey is the word, right? We talk process, we talk journey. It's a journey of becoming, and I think that's really one of that's the way we approach it. All right, the other thing is, you know, again, being collaborative. Up here you could see that we work in teams. So for example, I work with Dean Davis. He and I work with the same group of students, and we meet weekly to go over, hey, what are you hearing? What am I hearing? And so in fact, you know, are these students ready to have that college talk? Or maybe not, whatever it might be. But again, both of us are involved in guiding them towards sort of becoming themselves. Lynn spoke about the fact that we're going to be making a presentation like this to sophomores next cycle, and it's the college counselors who are making that presentation. So we haven't been in there. The school counselors have been with the sophomores for much of the year. We did go in the fall when it was time to talk about the PSAT, and we're going back in now to sort of introduce this turn, right? So there's an intentional movement toward working more directly toward the college piece. In terms of the future, we will have a junior parent evening, and that's in January of junior year, and a senior parent evening, which is in September of senior year. So, you know, you've had a freshman evening, yep, and we have our sophomore evening for the turn toward college just a bit, and then junior, well, it's full steam ahead for that. And in senior year, we're really talking about how is it that we finalize those decisions and those, you know, the paperwork to actually apply for colleges. Just a quick word here on the holistic side. Tomorrow we have our wellness day, and maybe you know a little bit about it and maybe not, but we have a team of about 25 student nurses, seniors, from the nursing school, the Egan School at Fairfield University, and they'll be all over the building presenting wellness topics, and that's something that our department certainly coordinates each year. So once again, part of the journey is to help them to discover. And again, you know, a big piece of that from this point forward, and something that Laura and Rick already talked a little bit about, is working toward the college piece. So if you've heard what we're saying in sort of a big picture status, yeah, we're here for you, we're here for them. We are holistic, we care about every aspect of their lives. We are encouragers, we can do a little prodding, and we also want to take our cues from you. And that was said already. Communication is very important. So in fact, see something at home that you think we should know, that maybe your son isn't representing to us about maybe a talent or an interest or whatever it might be, or concern you have. You know what, you need to dial us up. We respond to emails, phone calls, whatever it might be. When parents call and say, I hate to bother you, but, and I say, well, no, you're not bothering us. We work together on this, so we are collaborative. With that, that kind of ends our formal presentation. We have time for questions, and then counselors will be around for a few minutes. Should you like to come up and introduce yourself? And we have our first question. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm curious about the importance of, I guess, summer jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and then continuing that kind of either job through the school year or
Mhm.
versus doing that job the following summer.
Sure.
Is that continuation
Mm-hmm.
important for them?
So the question is about a summer job and maybe continuing that through the school year. Well, one thing I should say is, a job, if unless it can't be avoided, shouldn't stand in the way of good academic success. All right, so let's start with that. But certainly a job can offer a level of responsibility and independence. So I think, it's an individual decision. I don't think there's one thing that a student can do in the summer or in the school year, which is going to be sort of a magic piece there. But I think that many of our students get a lot of good experience out of working a summer job, and sometimes they'll keep that job. Sometimes those jobs give them insights into, hey, what is it that I'd really like to do? So, I think, we want their lives to be reflective in that sense. So you got a summer job. Hey, what does that mean to you? When students go off on an urban plunge, and you saw a picture there a couple screens ago where a bunch of guys were in a little tunnel there with Father Skip down at Blessed Sacrament. They go on the urban plunge, and so what does it mean to you? What is it, what happened in you when you went on the urban plunge? What does it say to you about maybe a talent or an interest you have, or whatever it might be? So I think it's the same thing with a summer job or any summer experience. So I think keeping busy is good, by the way, let's say that. So is it a job? Maybe. And if it's not a job, maybe it's some volunteer experiences. And there are a lot of those around there. The world needs a lot of what our students have to give. Yes?
I have two questions. The first one is, were we supposed to get a login to do this?
So good question. So I think all Naviance accounts were activated, but some of them were activated maybe some months ago, and you got this email from Naviance and like, what does this mean? So if you have not activated your account or can't find the email, just email your son's counselor, okay? And we will, in a heartbeat, we can renew it, right? We'll send you an update, and you'll be able to there'll be a password, then you'll start your own password, okay? So yes, Naviance account, it's a good time to start looking at those. Rick spoke about that. I think that's a really good step.
Okay. And the second question was, you said take the SATs multiple times. Do they have to average those out?
Good question. So colleges, this is about taking the SATs or ACTs for that matter on multiple occasions. Colleges will superscore. So for example, superscore means if a student takes the SAT, the digital SAT, twice, and his reading or evidence-based reading and writing is better than his math the first time and vice versa, they'll take the high and create a super score. So colleges will do that. Students then can send their scores and the colleges will superscore. So again, we have students right now in the junior class who took their SATs or ACTs and had success in one of the two areas, if it's SAT, or two of the four areas on the ACT, and they're going to take it again and maybe focus a little bit more on those other areas. So the answer is colleges do superscore. Good question. It's a good thing, correct. It allows them to really focus a little bit more on that area of testing that might not have been as strong as they want it or need it to be. All right, good question. And I think, Rick said it very well. When you talk about test optional, we would like to say, from our point of view, that it's not optional that you don't test. It's optional that you can, so you have to have something to report to opt out of. So again, the fact that colleges value scores if they're good enough, if they're strong enough. And the other thing is, and again, I don't want to get too far into this, but, some of the scores that students generate will be strong enough for some of the schools on their list and not for others. And that's where the option happens. So having a score gives you the chance to option. Okay. Yes?
I'm sorry, kind of a continuation of that last question. Does the
offer you an option to take it privately without, anyone knowing about it.
Yeah. Good.
It's a good question. What the scores that what can they see? I mean, there is Yale and Georgetown actually who require testing, actually require you to send every test you've ever taken going in there. Now that being said, I know it sounds scary. The reality is I've never seen a situation where I have a low sub-score on one day. I've never seen that, ever. I've never seen any evidence of that at those schools. They're really focused. It doesn't benefit them to focus on low scores. They've got to report their averages anyway, so it doesn't make any sense. So fear not that if they have an off day in a certain subject, now that doesn't mean to blow one off and have a super low score, a big disparity, but those situations just do not happen if the student focuses. I mean, yeah, you can be a little off. So fear not, it's okay. And really, I would say the vast majority of my students don't get all their top scores from this single test date. So when you do report them to colleges, currently the College Board with the SAT requires you to send the full test date. So if you received your top scores on 2 different test dates, you would have to send that full test date, both the full test dates to the college, and then they internally superscore it. If you talk to most of the colleges, they have no idea what all of the subscores are. It goes into a database, it pulls up on the screen, and it superscores for them. So I remember talking to Villanova about this. They're like, I have no idea what those subs are. We just know what the best scores are. The ACT does allow you to sort of select out your best subscores and send them on to the colleges. They allow you to do that before you send it off. But like I said, there is Yale and Georgetown sort of say you got to send us everything.
We have a very strong relationship with Fairfield University admissions, their vice president for enrollment management, and he'll tell us the very same thing. And he'll speak with you at the junior parent night, say, listen, we're not looking to tag anyone with a low score. We want to see what your strongest scores are. In fact, many of those things go into a database, and what comes out are the strongest scores. So they may not even see them. Yes? Oh, good question. So the SAT and the ACT it's one or the other, honestly, and there's no, they're absolutely weighted equally. Colleges don't prefer one or the other, correct. And if they receive more SATs and ACTs, they'll use a correlation chart and come up with an equivalency. So absolutely, this is exactly why we administer the pre-ACT and the SAT, or the PSAT, so that, what we would have to hope here is that you'd be able to make a decision without taking both. Because you know what, test prep and taking tests repeatedly, it can be difficult, and it can interrupt the normal flow of studying and playing sports and doing arts and those kinds of things. So really, I think the goal here is to help students to steer through the path, students and parents, and we're here for that conversation as well. There might be some other questions. We'll be happy to answer them individually if you'd like. It looks like there's a little bit of quiet coming over the room here, and it's getting a little bit late, I suppose, too. You saw a lot of the guys run by after the lacrosse game. I saw them coming down here. I don't know what the score is. Does anybody know what happened out there? Yes? We won. Thank you, Tim Zano. All right. Very good. So Prep beat #1 New Canaan today here at home. So awesome news. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Really do appreciate your support and your interaction. And we're here for a few hellos if you'd like. Thanks.